In western India, near the Bay of the Bengal, lies the ancient and lush jungles of the Sundarbans. In this area, commonly known as a mangrove wilderness, it comprises closed and open mangrove forests, barren lands, mud flats, and agricultural lands, used mainly by local farmers for subsistence farming. Aside from that, the area is also well known for its assortment of wildlife, which includes an insane number of Royal Bengal tigers. Sadly, due to an increase in human activity over the years, the habitat of this wildlife has continued to shrink, leading to a great struggle in maintaining a balance between human demands and that of the wild. Also, with the constant flood in the area caused by the countless canals and tidal streams, the ground almost always stays wet and muddy. So much so that you need to use boats to move around seamlessly. Sundarbans is a national park, and as such, the government has placed restrictions to prevent hunting and fishing of the local wildlife. However, the bandits are in no way threatened by this limitation. Even the locals ignore these laws sometimes, going out without a license to gather crabs and fish so that they can earn an income. But although they can pretty easily get away from the authorities, the wild sometimes stands up and fights back. In today's video, we're going to be telling the story of when the Bengal tigers of the Sundarbans fought back against the human encroachment on their territory, to the dismay and the trauma of two young children. In the early hours of Thursday, the 26th of June in 2014, 62-year-old Sushil Manji set out with his son Jyotish and adopted daughter Molina in a small boat to catch crabs. The trio rowed their boat down the Datta River into the Golakali forest, an area where they knew fishing was banned. With Jyotish, his son, in front of the boat navigating, Sushil was in the middle, while his daughter Molina was at the end of the boat. For Sushil, this wasn't his first rodeo. He had come down into this creek a couple of times to fish for crabs, especially because he lived just a kilometer from the creek. As the family continued to find their way deeper into the thick forest, the entire place grew darker, and after some time of paddling, they arrived at their spot at about 7 a.m. On arrival, Sushil and his children began preparing their equipment, but while doing so, something caught their attention. Now, it was normal for the air in the jungle to be somewhat heavy with humidity, and it remained that way even as they went out that morning. However, there was something different about the air today. A peculiar but strange odor filled their nostrils. In a bid to stay on to protect themselves from looming danger, they started to retreat to find their way back to a part of the forest that seemed safer. But as this little family would soon find out, nowhere in this jungle is safe. The trio was unaware of the fact that they were not alone, and in fact, they hadn't been since they had entered the forest. A sleek and silent observer was right there with them while they continued to paddle their boat upstream. It had stayed patiently between the bushes, hoping that at some point the group would get close enough to the bank for it to strike. And so, ignorantly, they paddled the boat to the middle of the creek. The fierce beast knew that it was time, and with lightning speed the Bengal tiger struck. Monila, Sushil's daughter, was the first to spot the tiger, and although it was only a blur to her sight, she immediately let out a large cry calling their attention to it. Dada! Bach! Which means, Father, tiger! In those split seconds, all Jyotish saw was the same blur, just a flash of yellow. Not sure what he had just seen, and scared to his bones, Jyotish stood there, numb and completely stunned. And only after a few minutes did it register in his head what had exactly just happened. The Royal Bengal tiger had just launched its enormous self off of the bank, landing straight on their father, Sushil. All he could do was watch his father's body entirely buried under the beast, with only his legs poking out from underneath, and thrashing about, trying to free himself from the tiger's grip. Fortunately, the gruesome sight he had just processed was able to jerk him out of the numbness as he had reached out and grabbed a stick, while Molina picked up the long cutter they used to clear the foliage in the jungle. With the weapons in their hands, the two began poking and hitting the tiger the best that they could. But all their efforts didn't seem to faze that tiger one bit. The hungry beast simply ignored the fact that it was being stabbed and poked and continued trying to get the perfect grip on its catch. It continued to clamp its jaws on Sushil's neck over and over again until it was sure that it had a good enough grip. Then, in one motion, the tiger jerked its head backwards and flipped Sushil's limp body onto its back. Once it had gotten a good grip, the tiger launched its massive body out of the body of the boat and landed right back on the bank, with Sushil dangling from its jaws. As the siblings watched in pure horror and dread, the ravenous beast, at almost the same speed as it came, disappeared right back into the dark forest with their father's body. Utterly traumatized by what they had just witnessed, Melina passed out. So immediately Jyotish began yelling for help. And in a rush, fishermen from neighboring areas gathered where the incident had occurred. But unfortunately, considering the reputation of this tiger in that area, not one of the fishermen that came to their aid was able to chase after the tiger, because they knew all too well they would never make it back alive. Besides, after listening to what Jyotish described, they all knew that, at best, all they could do was recover bits and pieces of Sushil's body, if the tiger wasn't already done with it. So, accepting the reality that their father was gone and never to be seen again, and to avoid any further misfortune, Jyotish did the next best thing he could. He immediately returned home as quickly as he could, to keep his sister safe and to contact the authorities. But after a report was made to the Sundarban Authority and the incident was confirmed, they went on to say that it had occurred in the forest where fishing was banned, and as a result, they could not intervene. Neither the authorities nor the family, even after Jyotish had explained his ordeal, made an attempt to recover Sushil's body. According to the locals, Sushil's case wasn't the first that they had witnessed in the area, especially because the tiger the Majis had encountered was just one out of the 250 Bengal tigers that had lived in the Indian half of the stretched-out UNESCO World Heritage Site. And so, in the year 2014, Sushil was the fourth person to have been killed by one of these tigers in the Sundarbans, without his body being retrieved by the family. No one would willingly sacrifice their lives all in the name of bringing back a corpse that might never be found in the first place. So the locals accepted that this victim would never be seen again. When we talk about wild animal attacks, we often say they go after the weakest in the group, the easiest prey. But not these Bengal tigers. These apex predators, they go for the men who are bold enough to venture into their territory in search of food. They go for the strongest in the group, their leader. And so it might be that these tigers are simply asserting their dominance as true kings of the jungle, and not just killing these men for a meal. Because if it was food that they wanted, the children would have been much easier targets. As humans continue to venture farther out into the forest, encroaching into the habitats of these wild creatures, incidents like this are going to continue to occur. Just around 100 years ago, 100,000 tigers lived freely amongst Asia. But today, only 3,900 tigers still exist, and half of them are Bengal tigers. And yet we still continue to poach them for profit, encroach on their habitat to hunt all their food. The sad reality is, in the end, man always wins. But at what cost? And is that really winning?